At 7 years old, I would never live past 30. I would be disabled my whole life and never have kids. Like, life ain't easy, but you don't never hear me complain. I don't get on stage and say, I just came from the ambulance. I did our HBO special straight from the ambulance out the hospital and went right back. But you ain't never heard me complain. I ain't never said nothing.
T-Boz has spent decades letting the world assume it knew her story. And what she has finally confessed changes everything. From selling 10 million records on TLC and still going bankrupt while the group generated $75 million.
We have been in this business for 5 years, and we are broke as broke can be.
To Dalvin, who was so terrified of marriage that just filming a fake wedding with T-Boz gave him the chills. The woman behind one of the biggest groups in music history has survived more than anyone knew. So let's get into it. Tion Watkins was born to Gail and James Watkins in Des Moines, Iowa on April 26, 1970. From almost the very beginning, her life was shaped by something she could not control. As she detailed in her memoir titled A Sick Life, she was diagnosed with sickle cell anemia as a child, and the disease was merciless. It landed her in the hospital again and again, and doctors delivered a devastating verdict. They told her she would never live past the age of 30, that she would be disabled her whole life, and that she would never be able to have children.
I was told at 7 years old I would never live past 30. I would be disabled my whole life and never have kids. But
that is the sentence a young Tion carried into everything she did. Most kids grow up believing they have all the time in the world. She grew up believing the opposite, that her clock was already running out. But rather than shrink from it, she treated her voice and her ambition as a way to outrun the prognosis. Her home life was unstable long before fame. When she was just 3, her parents split up. Her father moved to Florida to chase his own dream of becoming a musician, while Tion and her mother bounced back and forth between the Midwest and the South. After her mother gave birth to Tion's little brother, the family eventually settled in Atlanta, the city that would become the launching pad for everything that came next. By the time she reached her teenage years in Atlanta, Tion was already someone who had learned to fight. She had been fighting her own body since childhood. Soon, she would be fighting far more than that, because the choices she made as a teenager were about to bring the full weight of the federal government crashing through her mother's front door. Tion's teenage years were turbulent in every direction. In her memoir, she revealed that she was kicked out of 4 different high schools, and she later explained on social media that she had been targeted by classmates for being light-skinned. Around this same time, her mother landed a steady job at UPS, and with a consistent income, the family was finally able to afford nice things, like the big screen televisions that filled their home. Tion was holding down a job of her own too, but she was also dating someone who ran with a fast crowd. Even though she considered herself fairly responsible, she was drawn to him and to the street life he was part of. That attraction led her straight into disaster. When she was 17, her boyfriend started handing her checks to cash, each one worth thousands of dollars. She cashed them, having no idea that the checks had been stolen from a major corporation in another state, and that her boyfriend and his associate were running a full check-cashing scam. The consequences arrived without warning. After an investigation, the FBI kicked in her mother's front door, burst through the windows, and began tearing the home apart. Her little brother was thankfully at her godmother's house when it happened. T-Boz has said the look on her mother's face as agents destroyed their home was something she would never forget. The agents questioned her mother about how she could afford all the expensive electronics, and her mother told the truth, that she was an honest woman working at UPS. Then, with weapons drawn, the questions turned to Tion, and she realized the checks were stolen. Because she had never kept any of the money, she escaped jail by writing a confession letter at the bank. She never revealed what happened to her boyfriend. Though she said they kept dating and he was later locked up on a separate charge he did not commit. Instead of graduating with her classmates in 1988, Tian was held back a year and graduated with the class of 1989. Her mother wanted her to go away to college, but Tian chose to stay close to home in Atlanta. She enrolled in beauty school and got a job at a local beauty supply store, and it looked like her life was heading in an ordinary direction. Then, everything changed. She became a member of a group called TLC, alongside Rosonda Chili Thomas and the late Lisa Left Eye Lopes.
I'm the T-Boz. I'm the leggy left eye. I'm the and that is on the TLC tip.
TLC released their debut album, Ooh on the TLC Tip, and in 1992, they went on their first tour, opening for MC Hammer in Dallas. Boys II. Men and Jodeci were on that same tour, and it was there that Tian first crossed paths with Dalvin DeGrate, better known as Mr. Dalvin of Jodeci. He was interested right away, but she was cautious, and for good reason. There were, as she put it, a lot of extracurricular activities happening on that tour. Dalvin always seemed to have countless groupies chasing him, and there were rumors that all the Jodeci guys were hooking up with the tour's dancers. For those reasons, Tian kept her distance for most of the run. It was not until the very last week of the tour that Dalvin finally approached her directly. His sense of humor won her over almost immediately, and the two began a relationship. She has said it was a lot of fun, but also filled with a lot of arguments. And while that romance was heating up, TLC was about to explode into one of the biggest acts in the world, right before hitting one of the most shocking financial walls in music history. In November 1994, TLC released Crazy Cool, and it turned them into superstars. Both Creep and Waterfalls climbed all the way to the top spot on the Billboard Hot 100. The album sold more than 10 million copies. By every visible measure, TLC was on top of the entire music industry, the biggest girl group in the country. And then, in 1995, they filed for bankruptcy. It was a stunning contradiction that fans could not wrap their heads around. How does the #1 girl group in the world, an act selling tens of millions of records, end up broke? The answer exposed the ugly machinery underneath the music business. The group generated around $75 million, and yet each member walked away with only about $50,000.
We have been in this business for 5 years, and we are broke as broke can be.
The situation grew so desperate that the members took drastic action. T-Boz has described how they literally held their manager hostage, armed to force a resolution to their financial nightmare.
Lisa was the ringleader.
Like, we need to go get our money. I need to know where my MF and money's at.
It was a shocking moment for a group whose public image was built on fun and confidence. Behind that image, they were fighting just to survive the deals they had signed. Help came from an unexpected place. Left Eye's boyfriend at the time, football player Andre Reeson, gave each of the women $15,000 so they could afford to hire a bankruptcy lawyer. 3 of the most successful young women in music needed a loan from a boyfriend just to file their paperwork. It was one of the clearest examples ever of how an artist can generate a fortune and see almost none of it. Tian and Dalvin's relationship stretched on for years, but he showed no signs of wanting to take it further. The two even got married on screen in Jodeci's video for Love You for Life. And according to Dalvin, just play-acting a wedding shook him to his core. Talking about marriage gave him the chills, and that filming the wedding scenes felt so real he had to take breaks because he kept picturing himself actually walking down the aisle. Then came the betrayal. In 1996, Dalvin went back to his hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina, while Tian was in Atlanta. He was staying at a hotel with an adjoining room occupied by a woman he claimed was his cousin. Though Tian later found out she was a recording artist he had known for a long time. One night after Dalvin passed out drunk while they were on the phone, a second woman picked up the line, and she turned out to be his ex-girlfriend. Tian became so enraged that she hung up, booked the first flight to Charlotte, and confronted the woman in the hotel room, writing that she cracked the woman's jaw and broke her eye socket right there. It was a dramatic, violent episode, and yet she forgave Dalvin and continued on in the toxic relationship. Through all of it, her health kept declining. She was constantly hospitalized, and she wrote that Dalvin not only failed to understand her disease, he never once visited her while she was hospitalized. His excuse, she said, was that he did not want to see her that way.
He basically lied, like he was in denial, because sometimes when you read about yourself, some people just don't want to tell the truth. So he probably hasn't read it, and if he reads it, I don't care what he thinks, because that's what happened.
Around 1998, after another hospital stay, Dalvin booked them a hotel room in Los Angeles and then went out with friends instead of staying with her. Left alone feeling rejected, she watched an episode of The Ricky Lake Show about women struggling in their relationships, felt their pain deeply, and was inspired to write Unpretty. In April 1998, an F2 tornado tore through Atlanta, causing the worst destruction the city had seen in years. Hundreds of people across 4 counties were suddenly forced to rebuild their lives. T-Boz ran for shelter inside her home, and thankfully, she was safe and her house was spared. But the entire street directly behind her was destroyed. Standing in the aftermath, looking at the devastation so close to her own door, she had a moment of clarity. She realized she could have lost her life in an instant, and that changed her priorities immediately. She no longer wanted to waste her limited time on people who made her unhappy. She picked up the phone, called Dalvin, and told him it was over. It was a decision born from staring straight at her own mortality, something she had been doing since she was a child with sickle cell, but this time delivered by a storm that flattened everything behind her house. Even though their relationship had been far from healthy, the two remained close afterward, and to this day, Dalvin has referred to her as his great friend for life. It freed her to move toward a completely new chapter. TLC released the album Fan Mail in February 1999, and a few months later, while filming the Unpretty video, Tian met someone new. Quincy Jones's son, Quincy III, brought along his friend Dietrich Rollison, better known as Mac 10 of the hip-hop supergroup West Side Connection. He complimented her on her eyebrows, which amused her, and after the shoot, a group went to dinner, where Mac 10 paid the entire bill and made sure to get her number.
Honestly, I pulled up, and then I think I pulled up a couple of more days after that. You know what I'm saying? And the rest was history.
They began talking every single day, and eventually, he asked her out. She agreed, but on one condition. Tian never went on dates alone, always making sure family or friends came along. So she told Mac 10 he would have to fly her and a friend out to Los Angeles if he wanted to see her. He agreed. After that first date, she and the father of 2 became an item, and by the time 2000 arrived, Tian was pregnant. For a woman who had been told she would never live past 30 or have children, it was nothing short of a miracle. They married on August 19, 2000. Gerald Levert sang as she walked down the aisle, and Mac 10's favorite group, The Whispers, played the reception. But even in that moment, she was full of doubt, asking herself whether she was making a mistake and whether he was cheating on her. She blamed the feelings on pregnancy hormones and went through with it. The stress of the day wiped her out so completely that she had to cancel the honeymoon and be admitted to the hospital. On October 20th, 2000, 1 month before her due date, she gave birth to their daughter, Chase Rollison. But joy turned dangerous when breastfeeding began draining her body and worsening her sickle cell symptoms. Every time she fed her baby, she vomited and lost more fluids until her body shut down entirely and she fell into a coma. She spent 3 days unconscious in the ICU. When she finally woke, her mother laid the child on her chest and told her she had to fight because now she had someone to live for. T-Boz recovered and was released 9 days later, but the health scares kept coming. In 2002, she spent 2 months in the hospital, and just days after being released, she received news that shattered her. Left Eye had died at the age of 30 in a car accident in Honduras. Losing the woman she considered a sister was a wound that never fully healed, and TLC released the album 3D in October 2002 in the shadow of that grief. While she was still struggling with that loss, her marriage was falling apart. After nearly 4 years, T-Boz filed for divorce, accusing Mac 10 of adultery and saying he had put his hands on her during the marriage. Mac 10 denied the allegations, but T-Boz was granted a temporary restraining order that prohibited him from coming within 100 yards of her. The divorce was finalized in 2005. In her memoir, she wrote that no matter how it ended, she did not regret the marriage. Mac 10 has told his own version, saying in an interview with Vlad TV that nothing physical ever happened and that her lawyers concocted the story to strengthen her case. He also said the two now laugh about it and consider themselves great friends. Whatever the truth of those competing accounts, T-Boz was ready to move on. In 2005, T-Boz and a friend opened a children's clothing store called Chase's Closet in Houston, expanding it into an online store and a clothing line. She also began dating NFL player Tequila Spikes. Things were going well until the fall of 2007, when she was diagnosed with a brain tumor. Tequila was tragically familiar with the crisis, having lost his own father to a brain tumor, so he supported her and helped her narrow down which doctors would perform the surgery. Before the operation, her doctor told her to eliminate anything causing her stress, so she closed her store and let go of her lawyers and her assistant. Her 7-hour surgery took place in November 2007. She woke up to her aunt and Tequila smiling at her, but the surgery affected her balance and cost her 3% of the hearing in one ear. The medication changed her body dramatically. It took her 3.5 years to fully recover. The struggles continued. A planned adoption fell through when the birth mother never showed up to sign the papers, leaving T-Boz devastated. She filed for bankruptcy twice, once in early 2011 and again just months later, stating she was past due on her $1.2 million Georgia home and owed $250,000 in back child support. She appeared on a short-lived reality show, and in 2016, she finally welcomed a son, Chance Watkins, through adoption. In 2017, TLC released a self-titled album, funded partly by fans who contributed more than $400,000 through Kickstarter. Her confession has never really stopped. In August 2024, T-Boz suffered a sudden medical emergency after a performance, an abdominal blockage caused by scar tissue from an earlier surgery, which forced TLC to cancel shows. When people speculated cruelly about the cause, she spoke out, refusing to let anyone define her by her illness and insisting she is Tion Watkins, a woman who happens to have a disease but is not defined by it.
Like, life ain't easy, but you don't never hear me complain. I don't get on stage and say, I just came from the ambulance. I did our HBO special straight from the ambulance out the hospital and went right back. But you ain't never heard me complain. I ain't never said nothing.
That has been the through line of her entire life. Told she would not live past 30, she has spent every year since proving the prognosis wrong, on her own terms and out loud. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.